Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm a physiotherapist in Peterborough, Daniel Udino. I decided to do an interview as a part of Movember. Myself and the crew here over at our clinic that I work at is doing Movember, and we're going to be trying to raise awareness for mental health. So as a part of that, I was going to do a couple of interviews. The first one I'm going to be doing is with Kestrel, who's an occupational therapist. You can introduce yourself, Kestrel.
I'm Kestrel.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we'll kind of keep it short and sweet and try to just kind of go through things. But I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind answering them. And thank you for actually agreeing to do this with me, just to try and help do our part in raising awareness about men's mental health.
Definitely.
Okay, so the first thing I think I'll do is, because you're an occupational therapist, a lot of people don't even know what that is. So just briefly explain how occupational therapy works in the mental health field.
Definitely. Okay. Well, I'll explain what occupational therapy is first, and then I'll apply it to mental health because that'll probably make way more sense.
Fair.
So occupational therapy, when we talk about occupation, we don't talk about work specifically. We talk about anything that occupies your time. So that's things like basics, bathing, dressing. It could be sleep. It can be work, productive activities around the house. It can also be leisure activities. And as an occupational therapist, what we do is we look at what are the barriers stopping you from doing those occupations. And so when we apply that to mental health, often it's related to lack of motivation or high anxiety or a variety of different symptoms and experiences that people have when it's related to a mental health issue, and how those prevent people from doing the things that they need to do or want to do.
Right. Okay. So, and I mean, especially, I feel like nowadays that's like a more prevalent thing than ever. With
Absolutely.
Like all of us recovering from the pandemic and everything else.
Definitely.
Okay. So, what would you say then? Let's kind of flipping this back to like men's mental health a little bit more specifically. What do you say are some of the major contributors to anxiety and depression in men?
Definitely. Okay. So in terms of that, I can talk a bit about like research wise, and then also like what I've seen clinically. Research wise, there's not actually a lot of difference between the causes or the contributors to men's mental health versus women's or people's mental health. Okay. It's a lot of the same things: relationships, financial stressors, day-to-day challenges, different things that happen. I would say the biggest difference between men's mental health and women's mental health or other people's mental health is that there's the stigma of not speaking about it. And so the statistic that I am not remembering totally off the top of my head, but the suicide rates are higher in men compared to women. A lot of the statistics around the impacts from like a fatal perspective are a lot higher for men with mental health, and often it's just because the space is not there to talk about it. And so that's how it contributes more. It's more of like a silent issue, whereas with other people it's more open, and there's obviously stigma just generally across the board around mental health, but with men there's that additional stigma of like the strong silent, not talking about it, and then it gets
seen as like a positive thing to to just suck it up and whatever.
Yeah. I also recently was reading too that they've recently been researching postpartum depression in men, like fathers, and how that's something that's been sort of not noticed or not acknowledged, and now it's still sort of they're learning about it and how to work with it, but that it does exist in fathers as well.
So like mental health is like ever growing. That's
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Absolutely. And then clinically, again, same reasons. It's a wide variety of people that I see, specifically from like a male standpoint. Anyone who's like younger, older, just is across the spectrum, and often people, specifically men, will say, I haven't, like I talked about this before, this is all very new to me. And what I've seen in terms of when I'm talking to women, it's not as new, and they've heard about it before.
They're a bit more like used to just speaking about their feelings or whatever, right? Oh, that's interesting. It's a huge point. It kind of contributes to like just what you see, I guess, right?
Definitely.
Okay. So then in that case, like if we were to kind of try and bring this back home a little bit, or like back to the individual, let's say, what are some strategies that someone can do like on their own at home to improve their own mental health?
Absolutely.
Right, because like some people are a bit afraid to reach out. You
definitely.
know what I mean? Like especially if that's a stigma with men, it's like they might be a little bit apprehensive, but it's like, okay, what do I do then, right?
Absolutely. And so I think it's kind of twofold. There's the aspect, which I know we've talked about before, in terms of like health prevention. And there's a lot of things from a mental health standpoint that we can do as well to prevent or reduce risk or reduce symptoms. And there's also kind of when we're feeling more depressed, more low, or when we're feeling more anxious, there's strategies we can use in that moment to help bring us back.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know which one you want me to talk about.
Give us all of it.
Sounds good. So from a prevention standpoint, it's all things that we hear about all the time in the media. Lifestyle factors, so things like getting enough sleep,
Right.
eating nutritious meals, moving your body every day.
Yeah, so just being healthy.
Exactly. The hard thing is that I want to mention, though, is with mental health, whether it's from a preventative standpoint, some of these lifestyle factors are also helpful, like when you are feeling low or you're feeling like less motivated or you're feeling really anxious. Things like moving your body can help get rid of some of that anxiety and that stress, which we've all experienced before. If you go out for a walk when you're feeling stressed and you come back, you're like, oh, it's way better.
Yeah, runner's high, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing.
All of these different things. The hard part with mental health issues sometimes is that to get to that can be really tough. Like if you don't want to leave the house because you're not motivated. So some of these factors that are helpful are hard to access.
Yeah, and I mean, like I can speak from that, honestly, like from personal experience. I love working out. You know, anyone who doesn't know me personally, like, knows that that's like a huge part of my life. But whenever I've like had my own struggles, like that's one of the hardest things that I have is like that motivation just to get going. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And it's like, yeah, I know that, even though I know, like being physio, I'm like, oh, exercising 100% is gonna make me feel better.
Yeah.
But it's like just to get out of the house is like brutal.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the same with me and sleep. It's like, you know, good sleep is important, but there are times when take my phone to bed with me. That's not great. I do it anyway, even though I know it. Yeah. And then so if I'm noticing that, it's like being curious with yourself to say like, why am I doing this? And then what can I do to change it?
Okay, so just kind of questioning, I guess, like why your own behavior is like what's bringing you. Okay.
Is it because I want to? Is it because I'm avoiding something? Is there some sort of like underlying thing that maybe I can work on myself, strategy wise?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what you're saying you can just do on your own, right? Like just question. Wow.
Definitely.
Okay. I mean, easy enough.
Yeah. And then sometimes it could be at that point where you're like, okay, I don't really know what's going on, and that's where maybe more support's helpful. Or it could be, you know, it'd be really helpful to talk to someone, like friend, family member. It could be helpful to just spend some time with my pets, go to sleep early tonight.
Yeah.
Have a meal that I haven't had in a while. Like there are ways to sort of move forward from that too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that actually like leads perfectly into the last thing that I was going to ask, which is, you know, say you're trying to do all that, I guess, and what's like a sign or symptom that you'd want to be aware of in yourself, or that you could, if you could give it, I'm not sure if this is a good question in that regard, but that could indicate like seeking a mental health professional to help you.
So I can't diagnose.
Right.
But what I would say in terms of signs and symptoms and when to seek kind of more like professional help or professional support, one thing that I saw, and I wish I tried to look if I saved it, I saw it on Instagram, but it was a psychotherapist, and one of the points when they had said, should you seek like psychotherapy in this example, and it was, if you are wondering if you should, you should.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that is a very interesting thought, because if there's enough going on for you to wonder if you should, then maybe it would be helpful. Right. And I know kind of in Ontario and Canada, there's the publicly funded help for mental health. There's also private. And so there is that sort of challenge where public has accessibility options, but there's like wait lists for it. Private, you have to have the financial means. But in terms of what you would maybe notice from an OT lens, how I think about it is when there's been a change in function. So
that's easy enough, I feel like.
Yeah. So it could be, is that change related to like who knows what? But if I'm noticing maybe you used to cook a lot and now you're ordering in, or you're buying more convenience foods, and it could be that normally you do a lot of convenience foods but now you're not eating.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Or you're eating cereal. And there's nothing wrong with any of these choices, but it's when there's been a change.
Yeah. It's like not your normal.
Yeah. When it's not your normal from a functional standpoint, if you're not sleeping well and it's persistent. If you have one bad night's sleep, it's one bad night's sleep. If there's a pattern, then it's okay, what's going on. Same with like work, if you're calling in sick a lot for mental health related reasons, or just lack of motivation, hard getting going, where you have some of those like butterfly, like gut, I just don't feel good, I'm really anxious feelings, and it's preventing you from doing things, going out with friends.
Right.
Typically it's like if there's a change in your function, from my standpoint, that's when it would be helpful. If you've tried on your own or not, and you feel like you need that extra support, that would be when I would say it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense, and I feel like that's a easy enough thing to like pinpoint in yourself, right? Because you know, anyone who might see this now, they can kind of walk away and go, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm thinking about like what Kestrel said there, like, oh, I'm definitely just like, I've been ordering in all the time because like I just don't have the energy to cook anymore. I used to like cooking, or I'm not going to the gym as much.
Exactly. Or it could be like bathing less frequently, like things like that sometimes happen too. And it's if you bathe once a week and now it's every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then it's kind of asking if you're someone who would like bathe every day and now it's like once a week. Like it's very variable based on what your baseline is.
Yeah.
And your baseline in terms of when you were feeling well. Because if you've been experiencing those symptoms for a long period of time, you might not notice it as a change.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's to say, okay, maybe this is what used to be going on. Now this is where I'm at. There could be this longer term, like maybe you've been managing or trying to deal with your symptoms for a long period of time, and so there is a change, but it's not as obvious.
Right.
But be more like, okay, when I was feeling really well and I was feeling kind of that I was managing things okay, has there been a change?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, that's all the questions that we really have for you today. But I think that was great. Like, I couldn't have asked for like a better group of answers there, right? Like, it's something that I was hoping to just like make this video just so people would have something to take away from, right? Like help like raise that awareness and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer all that for me and move on. Anyways, guys, till next time, I'll be hopefully doing another interview with a psychologist to kind of go down a little bit more down this road, maybe get a little bit more in depth. Psychologists can diagnose mental health disorders, so they can get a little bit deeper on the mental health side. Occupational Therapist Center, we're kind of like in between what a physio would do and like a psychologist would do, you know what I mean? So they're like a beautiful gray area and helping bridge that gap.
Yes.
But it's like it's a big gap, so it's an important one to fit. Anyways, thanks, and till next time.
Wonderful.
3.